We believe that Mr. Robinson is a serial and sick rapist that must be stopped.
A bombshell lawsuit was filed this week against legendary R&B singer Smokey Robinson and his wife Frances. In it, 4 of Smokey's former housekeepers accused him of sexual assault and rape, while accusing his wife Frances of fostering a hostile work environment. I'm Elizabeth Millner with Law&Crime. Now, when we first reported on this story on Tuesday, Smokey Robinson hadn't yet responded to the allegations against him. But now the 85-year-old's lawyer is slamming the claims, calling them vile and false.
Our 4 clients have a common thread. They're Hispanic women who were employed as housekeepers by the Robinsons, earning below minimum wage. As low-wage workers in vulnerable positions, they lack the resources and options necessary to protect themselves from sexual assaults throughout their tenure as employees for the Robinsons. Let me briefly summarize each of their individual claims. I will not describe the details of the sexual assaults and rapes because they're too graphic and disturbing for this news conference. But you can read them in the complaints that we have provided with many of you today.
That was the attorney representing the 4 former housekeepers in their lawsuit against Smokey Robinson. According to the complaint, the alleged sexual assaults lasted for years. All 4 women remained anonymous in their filing, only going by Jane Doe 1, 2, 3, and 4. Jane Doe 1 says she was sexually assaulted by the singer 7 different times, from March of 2023 to February of 2024. Jane Doe 2 says that she was sexually assaulted 23 different times by Smokey Robinson, beginning in 2016 until she resigned in 2020. Jane Doe 3 alleges she was repeatedly raped at least 20 times during her time working with the Robinsons from 2012 until 2024. And Jane Doe 4 claims she was also repeatedly sexually assaulted while working for the couple from 2006 to 2024, with the first alleged incident happening in 2007. In light of the allegations, Smokey Robinson had 3 words to say about it. I am appalled. He went on to say, I can't speak about this right now. But his lawyer had a harsher response to the suit, saying in a statement, we have more to say in the coming days as we make our legal response, and in time, Mr. Robinson will respond in his own words. As this case progresses, the evidence, the crucial element that guides us, will show that this is simply an ugly method of trying to extract money from an 85-year-old American icon. $50 million to be exact. Through this process, we have seen the bizarre theatrics of yesterday's news conference as the plaintiff's attorney outlines vile, false allegations against Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, trying to enlist the public as an unwitting participant in the media circus they are trying to create. We ask anyone following this case to reserve judgment as the evidence comes to light and all the actual facts of the case unfold. The press conference Smokey's attorney is talking about is the one from Tuesday. And yes, the plaintiffs are seeking $50 million.
Obviously, no amount of money can compensate these women for what Mr. Robinson subjected them to. But given the gravity of Mr. Robinson's despicable and reprehensible misconduct that is further detailed in the complaint, this amount is clearly warranted.
The details laid out in the complaint are extremely graphic. Jane Doe 1 claims Smokey would take his wife to the nail salon, and when he came home, he allegedly would call Jane Doe 1 into his bedroom, lock the door, escort the couple's dog out of the room. According to the filing, he would shower, then put on his underwear, then he would neatly place a white towel on his bed in preparation for what was about to occur. The document says Smokey would kiss Jane Doe in her mouth, her neck, and her breast, then would allegedly penetrate her with his fingers, then penis, which would cause her pain. She says she would resist, and in one attempt reminded Smokey he was married, something that, according to the complaint, Smokey casually ignored it. Jane Doe 2, 3, and 4 echoed the same allegations. As far as Smokey's wife Frances's allegations, those stem from allegedly creating a hostile work environment. So, for example, Jane Doe 1 claims Frances regularly screamed at her. Jane Doe 2 claims if she refused to sleep with Smokey, the singer would allegedly make his wife be mean to her. And all Jane Does claim Frances also allegedly said ethnic slurs to them. According to the complaint, Frances is also accused of failing to take appropriate corrective action to prevent her husband's, quote, deviant misconduct despite having full knowledge of his prior acts of sexual misconduct. Because according to the filing, Smokey had settled claims before with other women. So in all, the complaint lays out the rape, sexual assault, and hostile work environment allegations, as well as all 4 Jane Does claiming the Robinsons failed to pay the minimum or overtime wages. They weren't provided rest or lunch breaks or provided wage statements for the hours that were worked. Now, despite the defensive response from the Robinsons' attorney, the plaintiff's attorney says there was a reason the women didn't come forward earlier.
The obvious question that one will ask, and I suspect most will, why didn't they report Robinson's criminal misconduct to law enforcement or go public before now? As I said before, these women were all low wage earners living from paycheck to paycheck. They all feared missing a payday and not being able to pay their rent or buy food for their families. And also, Smokey's Robinson celebrity status intimidated them and all made them feel powerless. I want to add that these 4 women were afraid of shame, familial humiliation, and embarrassment. The stigma that still exists in some cultures that unfortunately blames a rape victim for the assault perpetrated against them. And having to tell their husband and children of these despicable acts against them left them overwhelmed with shame and embarrassment. So throughout their dreadful experiences with Mr. Robinson, all 4 women remained silent because many of them worked at the same time. Too embarrassed to reveal their assaults by Mr. Robinson to each other. Once they broke their silence, an avalanche of emotions began to flow between them. Hence, they're all here today.
And again, that was the plaintiff's attorney speaking during that Tuesday press conference after the shocking lawsuit came out. I'm joined now by criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson Ferrer. Safa, always great to see you. So we just heard from the plaintiff's attorney about why the 4 women didn't come forward earlier. But I want to know your thoughts actually just about the allegations as a whole. Reading through the complaints, what did you kind of make of it?
You know, the allegations are very serious in nature, certainly, and sexual in nature. And reading through that complaint, you really kind of get to understand the gravity of some of the allegations with respect to Mr. Robinson's alleged activity. You know, these things allegedly occurred some time ago, but I think now what we're seeing a lot are these call to actions against sexual violence and things of that nature. So I think this sort of lawsuit just echoes some of the things we've been seeing post the Diddy lawsuit, and we've seen it with many celebrities at this point, but very serious allegations here.
Yeah, and the details were just pretty graphic to read. In your opinion, how powerful are the numbers here? You know, we have 4 women essentially all saying the same thing, whereas, you know, we've seen in other cases, for example, like Diddy's, that, you know, these suits being filed one by one, but as opposed to this case with Smokey Robinson and even his wife, Frances, what do you make of just the 4 Jane Does coming against him in one complaint?
Yeah, you know, I think what probably happened here, and before I even get to that, what I will say is that the allegations with respect to each and every Jane Doe are very similar in nature, and they sort of echo some of the same things, essentially that they were lured or they were in this blue bedroom, and these allegations occurred. Very similar allegations with regard to sexual misconduct or penetration and things of that nature. So the acts are very, very similar. The experiences are very similar. The allegations, I should say. What I think probably happened in this case is that these Jane Does essentially at some point would have crossed paths with one another, did work together while they were working for Mr. Robinson. And so they end up having conversations and disclosures, and probably had a conversation to say, hey, this was my experience. Well, this was my experience too. Maybe we should talk to an attorney. They did that and ultimately decided to bring a joint suit.
Not only that, they're suing him for $50 million. Now, Smokey Robinson's lawyer said that the evidence will show that this is simply an ugly method of trying to extract money from an 85-year-old American icon. What do you make of that statement?
You know, and that could be true, but right now, these are simply allegations. These are not facts. These are allegations that are made by 4 individuals who claim that Mr. Robinson did these things. And of course, Mr. Robinson has the utmost right to defend himself, to defend his name and things of that nature. And as the suit continues, I'm sure through the discovery process, we'll be able to see more, or at least Mr. Robinson and the plaintiff's attorneys will have an exchange of information where the picture will be created as to what actually happened. What are the actual facts? And if this case makes it to a trial, then the jury or the judge, if it's a bench trial, will determine those facts. I think in this case, it would likely be a jury trial.
And I hate to kind of phrase it this way, but we have four housekeepers going up against a beloved figure, a beloved person, and obviously that being Smokey Robinson. I mean, he's a legendary singer. Honestly, I'm even a fan of his, so I was pretty blown away just by this lawsuit, by these allegations, and I thought it was pretty interesting that these women had claimed that, Smokey has settled these types of cases in the past. But as far as just, these women describing in their complaint being fearful of his power, his connections, the fear of public embarrassment, or even that he would do something with their immigration status, what do you just make of just these four women just going against, Smokey Robinson?
I think as I read through the complaint and I understand what their concerns could have been, I think that it's a double-edged sword, and I know people might be upset with me saying that. Is that yes, these are allegations; they're mere allegations at this point, and the idea that you could lose your job or your livelihood based on somebody having that much power, and especially your immigration status. And I think that there's reference to Frances Robinson in the complaint as well, with regard to making racial type, even or ethnic type slurs to these women. So that's very scary, especially if you're not, born in the United States, you're here to work. I mean, you have somebody that powerful with that much money and very beloved. There may be some fear there as well. Ultimately, though, these women did decide to disclose. It's pretty much expected that once they disclose, and I think they left the job before they disclose, there's not really a fear there of losing the job because you've already left. So again, it's going to be a balance, but definitely some understanding the concerns of the complainant in these cases and the Jane Does as well.
And Safa, you kind of mentioned something that, I obviously want to talk to you about, is that, Frances was also named as a defendant in this suit. What do you make of the claims against her specifically as it comes to perpetuating an alleged hostile work environment, or even just kind of covering up her husband's alleged sexual deviant behavior? That's kind of how it was laid out in the complaint. But what do you make of just the allegations against Frances as well, too?
Yeah, I think that the Jane Does will likely have a bit more, and I hate to use the word standing, or skin in the game with respect to the hostile work environment allegations. They can all testify to what they directly experienced from Frances. When it comes to, not rectifying her husband's behavior, which is what was referenced in the complaint as well, that I think is going to be a bit more difficult because as a person, you can't control anybody but yourself. That's first things first. Not only that, but what was her state of mind? Was she aware? Did she know? And she very well could have been aware. She may not have been aware to the full extent that it was an allegation of rape at the time, or whatever the context would have been. So I think that's going to be more of a stretch, more difficult to prove. But we'll see again as the discovery comes in what she knew at what point. And there will be depositions that will be taken, and she probably or likely will be deposed. So we'll see what she knew at that point in time.
And also, just looking at kind of the dates of when these alleged incidents happen, some go back as far as even 2007, some happened as recently as just last year. But in terms of just this long date range that we're really kind of looking at here, what do you make of just how long this has allegedly been going on? Because I think a lot of people have just been kind of commenting, for the most part, being like, well, why didn't you come forward then? Why did you continue to work then? Why didn't you leave? Why did you stay? It's just always like, why? Obviously there's always explanations for why people do stay, out of fear, out of shame, out of what could be public embarrassment as well too. But what do you make of just this lengthy time that we're looking at, that Smokey Robinson was allegedly committing these types of acts?
Yeah, so as we know in the legal profession, there may be a significant amount of time that people might wait to disclose sexual abuse or sexual misconduct or their victimization. So that is very common, that it will take time. What will hurt the plaintiffs in this case is that they did, in fact, wait that long. Your ability to be able to recall certain acts or activities is much more like you are more likely to be able to recall those things closer towards the time of the allegation and the actual act, as opposed to waiting so long. And people will ask the question, why did you wait so long? Why did you continue to work? If you were in fear, you know, did they live there? You still drove, or you still showed up to work every single day? Why was that? Why didn't you go somewhere else or go to another employer? And there's no right or wrong answer to that, but those are going to be some of the things that the plaintiffs are going to be challenged on, is why they continue to work, why they didn't disclose sooner. And the defense is certainly going to make the argument, and they already essentially have, is that they're just looking for a payday. You know, in a current climate where we see, you know, many people going after famed celebrities who have money, this is just another instance where we're seeing just that. And that's not to say that that's my personal opinion, but that is ultimately what the defense is going to say.
And I feel like this is just kind of the start, and this is just the beginning of possibly more to come, especially when it comes to these types of allegations against Smokey Robinson. Safa Robinson-Ferrer, thank you so much for your time and your insight into this. Before we sign you off, though, do you think that you could see more lawsuits coming out against the singer?
I think we're definitely going to see more lawsuits coming out. I think that this, you know, is the catalyst for maybe more lawsuits coming down the line. And we'll certainly have a front row seat to that if that does happen.
And again, we'll always see how this continues to unfold. Again, Safa, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I always appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So what happens next? Well, we can definitely expect a response from the Robinsons. And it's been reported they'll likely ask for a dismissal of the complaint. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.